In this unit, we discuss how we balance our energy needs of our body and maintaining a healthy body weight, along with trying to make sure that we get the nutrients that we need so our body can function properly. And you can see from this picture I have on my introduction slide, all of those items we consider food. And they're not very nutritious foods. There are some nutrients in some of those things, but by far and away, the colas, the cakes, the cookies, the wines, they're not very nutrient-dense foods. They have a lot of what we call empty calories, and they tend to give us a lot of energy that we don't really need typically, and contribute to our body weight. So how do we balance our energy needs along with our nutrition needs, and how do we try and target a healthy body weight? So both being overweight and underweight, they can both have health risks to them. In the United States, we typically see more issues with being overweight, but there are issues with underweight individuals. We see poverty, malnourishment, anorexia, bulimia. This thing. Sorry about that. Too much weight can be hard on your joints, circulation, your heart, cause all sorts of cardiovascular diseases, contribute to diabetes. We've touched on those a little bit in other units, and we'll touch on them some more again. But also, if you're underweight, that can indicate deficiencies in other nutrients. And also, being underweight is dangerous. Even if you're well nourished but you're underweight, that can create a dangerous situation if the body is under stress. Anyone who's had the flu for a couple days knows what I'm talking about. You can quickly lose 10 pounds in 2-3 days from inability to keep food down and vomiting, diarrhea, and you really need those fat stores for times when the body is stressed or sick. So being underweight can be dangerous as well. Important to remember, though, that when we look at weight, it's really more important to look more at body composition. Sometimes our body weight is our guiding factor in trying to figure out our health, and it is an easy metric to use because you can step on a scale at any gym or school, or most people have a scale in their bathroom, and get a sense of where you are. But really, body composition is something we should look at more, and really, if your body composition is ideal, your weight will also be in line as well. So looking at proportion of muscle to fat is important as well as looking at weight. But we can only control that through behavior. Our body composition is greatly affected not only by what we eat, but how much exercise we have. And that is very important when we look at cardiovascular health, the way we burn our calories, and our ability to control diabetes. More lean muscle and less fat is ideal for controlling a lot of health issues. I have a chart here, and you can go online and find charts like this everywhere. My data here is from 2006, but the trends are about the same, whether you're looking at 2000, 2005, 2010, even now into 2012, 13, we see just this huge rate of obesity and just people being overweight. And it's gone more from just being overweight to higher proportions of obesity as well. And again, 33% of all the kids are overweight and obese, and that number is rising. There are some studies that have come out recently that have shown that in some areas the obesity rate in children has leveled off, which is a good thing. So we're starting to reverse that trend in some areas. But it's still very disturbing to see these high proportions of the population, both in children and in adults, that really struggle with their weight. And these people are going to have lifelong health challenges that they'll see in their 40s and 50s that other people may not have seen until their 70s or 80s or never at all. So how do we measure this, and then how do we control for it? Well, first of all, one tool you can use is called the BMI. And I know there's a lot of people right now listening to this crowing, going, oh my gosh, my doctor says don't use the BMI, or I'm a health fitness expert, or I work out in the gym all the time, and my personal trainer says the BMI is just a terrible tool. And in lots of ways, they're right. But the BMI, I do like to teach it because the BMI is a quick, easy tool that we can all use. It doesn't cost any money. It's just a little mathematical formula. And it does give us some good data on the health of populations in general. It doesn't apply to everybody, but it is a great, easy tool to quickly assess your health risks. We definitely see high BMIs are indicators of all the following diseases: hypertension, heart disease, stroke, diabetes, certain cancers, early death. So it's a great little tool. So for those of you that are out there going, I don't use the BMI, my BMI says I'm obese and I'm in phenomenal shape. So there are exceptions to the rule, and I will cover those, but I do want you to know what the BMI is, how you calculate it, and then know those exceptions to the rule. And also I'll give some examples of really some better tools to get a better assessment individually of your overall health based on weight and body composition. But for those of us who want to quick just get some stats on a population or quick see where we fall, the BMI is relatively accurate, so it's a good tool to use. How we classify body mass index, when you look at the numbers, once you run the formula and look at the numbers, if you are at a healthy weight, you're going to have a BMI in the range of 18.5 to 24.9. If you're overweight, your BMI will fall between 25 and 29.9. Underweight, you have a BMI less than 18.5. Obesity BMI is between 30 and 39.9, and there's a new category they've added in more recent years called extreme obesity. Sometimes it's called morbid obesity. If you have a BMI greater or equal to 40, that's considered the extreme obesity category. This is where you see a lot of people opting for the different bariatric surgeries and the lap band surgeries. These people have an extreme risk for early death, heart attack, major life challenges, major shortened lifespan. So even though surgery is risky as well, being in these extreme conditions, even the upper ranges of obesity, a lot of doctors will tell you it's a better risk for you to take the surgery than it is to stay in that condition. So how do we calculate that number? You can go online and Google this too. There's a million equations online. Just Google BMI and you'll find it. It's essentially a measurement of your weight in pounds divided by your height. So it's a ratio of weight to height. So as your weight goes up, that's the top number. So if the top number in a fraction goes up, so does your BMI. The height in inches is the bottom number that is squared. So take your height in inches. So like in my example, I'm about 5'9", which is 69 inches. I would square that. And then you multiply that fraction, weight versus height squared, times 703. And a lot of students are like, well, where do we get this 703 number? That's just a converter for the metric units. This equation was originally designed in kilograms and in meters. And so most people in America don't know the metric system very well. So, but most people know their weight in pounds and they know their height in inches. So you can use that same equation, but just multiply it by 703 to convert it into the metric measurements. So if you look at me, and again, my situation at the time of this recording is a little different because I'm actually currently pregnant. But based on my normal weight, I'm typically around 150, 155. It fluctuates in that range. And I'm about 5'9" inches. Oops. I'm about 5'9" inches. Ooh, bumped ahead a few here. So 5'9" inches is equivalent to 69 inches. And again, take my 155, those are my pounds, divided by 69 squared. Not 69 times 2, 69 times 69. So that bottom number should be 69 times 69, and then divide that by 155. So 155 divided by 69 squared times that overall result by 703, and you get 22.98. So if you look at the chart, that puts me in the healthy range, right? Woo! Don't want to be too much of a hypocrite teaching this course, so I better show you where I'm at. On my honor, take my word for it. That's my weight and my height. So calculate your BMI. I think it's important to look at these numbers and see where you fall. I have my students in the face-to-face class do this, and they turn it in, and I just look to see that they calculated it. And I just wanted to see that they figured out where they were and whether or not they agreed with the number, why or why not. No judgments made. I just want you to understand how you calculate this number, how you can quickly see where you fall. And then, it might surprise you. I've had students find out that they're underweight and didn't know that. I've had other students find out that they're overweight, but they're in extremely good shape, and they're like, oh, this BMI calculation doesn't really work for me. I work out, 5 times a week, and I run marathons, and it says I'm obese. So, and we'll talk about reasons for that too. So, take a second to calculate your own BMI. Make sure you understand how the equation is set up. Again, it's a ratio of your weight or your mass, essentially, in over your height times 703. So where do you fall, and do you agree with it, or why or not? Why or why not? And here are some of the reasons why you might not agree with it. And this is these are some of the reasons why a lot of students are despising me right now for teaching the BMI. Some of the reasons it doesn't really work is because it doesn't measure fat percentage. Remember, body composition is important. The more lean muscle you have, the better you are at burning calories. The more fat you have in your body, chances are cholesterol, triglycerides, the bad, those LDLs, all those saturated fats can increase chances of atherosclerosis and clogging of the arteries. So body composition is important, and the BMI does nothing to calculate body fat percentage. It doesn't work for athletes. Lean muscle is very dense. Muscle is a very heavy tissue. If you were to take a chunk of steak, really lean steak, and throw it in a tub of water, it would sink. But if you trimmed the edge of the fat off that steak and threw that into a tub of water separately, it would float. So muscle is a very dense, heavy tissue, whereas fat is very light and not very dense, so it tends to float on water. And so because muscle is so dense, that can make an athlete, a very fit person, have a very heavy body weight, even though they might be very fit. Typically, people don't use it when measuring the health of elderly people, because as we age, the intervertebral discs that are between our vertebra that protect our spinal cord, those shrink. Those actually get more and more compressed as we get older. And so as you age and your height is going down, that's going to skew the number on your BMI, even if you haven't gained any weight. And like I mentioned earlier, now is not a good time for me to use the BMI calculator because at the time of this recording, I'm actually pregnant. And so that 155 is quite a bit higher right now, as it should be. I should be gaining between 25 and 35 pounds to support a gestation or a pregnancy. And same thing when you're lactating. After you give birth, women will produce milk, and that they have maternal fat stores which contribute to their weight that are necessary to help support that milk production. And then the breast tissue itself is very heavy and contains a lot of fluid, a lot of excess fat, as it should, again. So that all contributes to weight. And so pregnant and lactating women really shouldn't use the BMI as an indicator of their overall health. And of course, children. Children are growing. They're not at their maximum height yet. So doctors' offices will have specific charts based on age and gender and things like that, and look at those ranges. Those ranges tend to be a little bit more flexible because kids go through different growth spurts at different times. So they'll look overall at the child's activity and physical fitness, and not just stick them on a chart somewhere. They've got a little bit of a range that they use to guide them. Another thing too about the fat is not only does it not measure fat percentage in the body, but it doesn't measure the location of fat. And the location of fat can also be a factor in overall health. Visceral fat refers to fat found in the stomach region. We refer to our intestines and our stomach as our visceral organs. So visceral fat is the fat that surrounds all those organs that make up the abdominal region of our body. And we refer to that as central obesity. For various reasons, having more visceral fat contributes more to certain health risks. A lot of people call this the old spare tire or the beer belly. Men tend to put more of their weight on in the central region. So if a male is overweight or obese, they tend to have more of a gut on them. And for a variety of reasons, there's more health risks with that. That puts a lot more pressure on those internal organs. Can also put more pressure on the heart, especially when in a laying down position. That central obesity can push up on the lungs and the heart. So visceral fat found around the stomach region, if you lay down your fatty tissue more in that region, you can have a higher chance of different cardiovascular diseases. Whereas subcutaneous fat, that's fat that tends to be found just below the skin, kind of helps with keeping us warm. It has a thermal benefit. Women tend to have more subcutaneous fat, lucky us, right? We know it as cellulite, and we tend to lay it more on our buttocks and our thighs, our outer thighs. And because it's just below the skin surface, that subcutaneous layer, it tends to be more ripply and dimply, and that's where you see that kind of dimpling of the skin that we know lovely as cellulite. It's less attractive, but it has less health risks. So think of that the next time you're getting ready to put the bikini on in the summer. It's not as risky for your health, even though it might not be as attractive as you'd like. There are more specific tools that you can use. You can look at the body composition, again, use that metric of looking at muscle to fat percentages. The fat fold test, this pinches the skin under the arm or on the back, which they have a little tool called, it's called calipers, which can actually pinch the excess tissue that lays kind of on the back of your rib cage or underneath your arm, just in close proximity to where your armpit nudges together. And it's actually quite accurate at determining how much body fat percentage you have by this little caliper machine. Another thing you can do is do an X-ray absorption. X-rays are absorbed at different wavelengths based on the density of the tissue that they're going through. So by knowing we can use our knowledge of how X-rays are absorbed or transmitted through something to help us measure the density of something. Of course, we use X-rays all the time to look at bones because bones have a different density than the tissues that surround them. So it's a great tool for looking at bones, but we can also use it to measure tissue density. And of course, muscle tissue is much more dense than fat. The underwater test. Like I said, fat is less dense than water. Muscle is more dense than water. So fat will float and muscle will sink. And so you can actually, go throw on a little swimsuit and go jump in a tub of water, and they can look at the displacement of how much water your body is displaced, and how, at what level you kind of, so-called float in that water. The higher up you float in the water, the more body fat you have. The more you sink, the less body fat you have. And then also electrical impedance. Fat's not a good conductor of electricity, so they can send a small electrical impulse through your body. It's not a very powerful thing. Don't worry, you're not sticking your finger in a light socket and zapping yourself. But they can send a small electrical current through your body that will give a sense of how good your body is at conducting that current. And if you don't conduct that current very well, that's a sign of a higher fat percentage. And of course, they have charts they can look at to see where you fall. Ideally, women should be between 20 and 30% body fat of their body mass, and men should be 12 to 20% of body mass. Again, women are more. A lot of you probably can figure out why this is. We are the child bearers. We are the ones that get pregnant and are lactating, and we use those extra fat stores and cushioning to help with procreation. So women tend to just naturally have more fat in their bodies. And this is also why, again, men tend to have more lean muscle mass, and lean muscle is a more metabolically active tissue. And so men tend to have a higher, what we call BMR, or most people just know it as metabolism. Men tend to have a higher metabolism than women in general because naturally their body mass is much leaner than a woman's. And here, these are just some pictures showing you these tests that they can do, these X-rays, running an electrical current through, and then here are those calipers that they can use for testing. Boy, this person doesn't have a lot of fat on them, do they? So those are some of the tools that we use. So when trying to find, are you at a healthy BMI? Are you not? Are you falling in that overweight or obese category or morbidly obese? Once you establish where you fall or where your family falls or where society falls as a whole, what is the price of that? What is the price of obesity to us? And a lot of us have seen this in our lives. We see this all around us in the United States. There are tons of costs to obesity, and they're not all easily enumerated. We know that there are huge health costs. This is the greatest to life expectancy in modern times. For the first time in history, we're able to really monitor and control diseases. We have created antibiotics and vaccinations, and our understanding of germs and how they work is amazing. Of course, we're always combating new illnesses and new diseases, but we have such a great handle on microbiology that a few hundred years ago we didn't have, not even just 150 years ago we didn't have, that it used to be very common to die from dysentery or an infection or something like smallpox, but we don't see that anymore. But today, we're seeing a huge threat to our life expectancy because of our overeating or our overconsumption of calories. So the health costs in quality and length of life are huge. And not just in the health costs, the financial costs. It's not just expensive in terms of our health, but it's expensive in terms of our healthcare costs. Many economists have calculated that with all the drama surrounding Obamacare, the amount of money that we spend on treating obesity and obesity-related illnesses would actually be enough to cover the healthcare costs of everyone that's uninsured. So it's a massive, massive drain on our healthcare system, all these different preventative illnesses that result from just not eating right and not exercising. So the financial burdens, the actual cost on your health, and then the social costs. Kids get bullied all the time for so many different things, and especially with the advent of technology and the age of the internet, bullying seems to have stepped up to a new level. And it's just another avenue for which people get ridiculed. People get looked at as not having control of their bodies or not being responsible or being lazy. And those things aren't necessarily true, but it's an easy target. How we look, and I know I'm preaching to the choir out there, I'm sure. How we look is an easy target, whether it's our hair color or our skin color or our height or our weight or the clothes that we wear. People can make judgments and assessments based on vision, based on what they see. And so there's a huge social cost to being overweight or being obese. People are more subject to ridicule and judgments. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying it is what it is. And so carrying around that extra weight's not only hard on your health and hard on your finances, but it opens people up to ridicule that's very unfair. And it's a sad thing to see in society, especially, and maybe this is more on a personal note, but with children. Children are, they're the ones that tend to bear the brunt of bullying, and they're the ones that are just learning the habits that they're being taught at home. And so they have very little control over, when they're little, the foods that are being offered to them. And so bad habits can develop from a young age, and it can straddle them with this ridicule and judgment when they get to school. And it's very, very sad to see. I've seen it firsthand. And unfortunately, we just have mean, judgmental people in our society. And so it's sad to see all of these different costs to obesity and obesity-related illnesses. But I think in some ways, those social costs are the most devastating that we see. So how do you know how much energy you actually need? So now you're like, okay, Mary, so now I've calculated my BMI and you've depressed me. Or, I had no idea I was overweight, or I had no idea I was underweight, or, okay, now I got a little bit better sense of where I fall. And now how do I even know how I got here? How did I get to a point where my BMI calculates me as healthy or underweight or overweight? And I guess I never really paid attention to it. Well, if you're trying to figure out how much energy you need on a daily basis, you need to look at things like your age, your height, your weight, your gender, and your physical activity. Essentially, what we call your EER is your estimated energy requirement. We essentially calculate that by adding your BMR to your voluntary activities. And your BMR stands for your basal metabolic rate, or a lot of people just refer to it as metabolism. This is the amount of energy required just to sustain your life. So if you were to lay in bed all day long and do nothing, just lay there, your body's still going to burn some calories. You're going to need to maintain body temperature. Your heart's going to beat. Your lungs are going to respire. Your blood is going to get transported around. Your kidneys are going to filter. Your digestive system's going to do peristalsis. You're still going to have all of those things happening, even if you just lay in bed all day long. And that number of calories that you need to do those basic functioning systems is known as your metabolism, or your BMR. There are things that can affect it, like I mentioned earlier, your height, your gender, your lean muscle mass, your pregnancy. If you're pregnant, that can change it too. And there are some other things like the thyroid gland does play a role in regulating the metabolic rate. There are a couple other hormones that can play a role. Just endorphins, adrenaline, things like that can increase blood pressure, heart rate. So there are a few other things that can contribute to it. Certain diseases can increase it or decrease it. But basically, again, this is just the basic functioning. This is like the lowest power possible to run your system. The more lean muscle you have, though, the higher your BMR. So you're not completely stuck. It's not like you can say, well, I have this disease and that speeds up my metabolism or slows it down. Or I'm female, so my metabolism is what it is. Or I'm getting older and my metabolism's slowing down. All those things may be true, but you can affect how much lean muscle mass you have. So if you exercise and convert more fat to lean muscle, you can contribute to a higher BMR. It is hard. Some people just naturally have a slow or a fast metabolism, and there are limits to how much you can change it. But there are some, again, like I said, you can't change your height, you can't change your gender, you can't change your age. You're limited on affecting thyroid function. Some of these major body issues you can't change, but you can change your lean muscle mass, which will contribute to a higher BMR. So just to give you kind of a rough estimate, for men, take your weight in pounds and divide by 2.2 kilograms, again, to get it in a metric. Multiply that by 24. That's about how many calories you need each day just to maintain that metabolism. Women, again, divided by 2.2, multiply by 23. So again, women, you need fewer calories. And I think I had done this for myself. Gosh, I'm trying to remember what it ended up becoming. I think it came out to be like 1,500 or 1,600 based on my weight. But again, this is typically this will vary depending on how much you do for voluntary activities. So however much you do for working out, taking the stairs versus the elevator, walking to work versus driving your car, sports that you play, all of these things are going to require extra energy. So at my height and weight, I think my EER was 1,500, 1,600, somewhere in there. But if you add in there the physical activities that I do during the day, it probably gets closer to 2,000, which is, again, that's what the daily value of calories, the average daily value of calories are that they print on food labels. So the things we can control directly, those voluntary activities, the more and more we do of that, not only do we burn calories actually doing those activities, but we also increase our lean muscle mass. So when we are not exercising, we're still burning calories at a faster rate. So again, can't control our basal metabolic rate directly, but over time you can raise it with exercise. So exercise has two benefits. Many benefits, but just in this instance it has two. At the time you're exercising, you're burning more calories, getting your heart rate up there, doing all those things to benefit your circulation. But then also you're converting more fat to lean muscle mass so that when you're not actually exercising, you still have contributed to a higher BMR. So huge benefit to exercise there. And again, BMR, those are the things we can't directly control, but voluntary activities we can, and over time that can raise our BMR. Remember, extra calories get stored as fat. A lot of people think, again, that if I don't eat fat, I won't get fat. That's not true. There are metabolic pathways where if you have excess calories, no matter what they are, especially those sugars, the body will take those extra sugars and they will convert them into fats and triglycerides. So calories in, calories out. If you consume extra calories, somehow they will eventually get stored as fat. And a pound of fat is about 3,500 calories. If you do the math on it, again, 9 kilocalories per gram, and do the gram to pound conversion, it's about 3,500 calories. So to burn a pound of fat, you need to do 3,500 calories worth of energy burning. You have to work out that much, or your metabolism has to consume that many calories. So what causes obesity? Consuming more calories than you are burning, period. You're not going to get obese by taking vitamins. You're not going to get obese by drinking water. You're going to get obese by consuming more calories than you are burning. It's simple math. If you take in the calories and your body doesn't need them, they got to go somewhere, and they are stored in our body as fat molecules. What influences this inequity? We see lots of different things, right? And a lot of you are going, yep, I see this. I have stress. I'm taking this nutrition class, and it's a lot of work, and I'm tired and exhausted, and I got a test to take. Stress can contribute to obesity. Stress affects our hormones, and hormones are linked to just like I mentioned, the thyroid. The thyroid is regulated by hormones, and that can contribute to our metabolism rate. Genetics, we do see some genetic links to obesity. Not as many as you would think. I don't like to cover the genetics angle as much because we as a species haven't evolved that much in the last 30, 40 years. It takes a long time genetically to evolve into a consistent gene pool where you see the genes for obesity really become dominant. But in the last 30 to 40 years, you've seen huge changes in our activity level and the types of food we've eaten. So there are genetic links to obesity, no doubt about it, but we're talking really small percentages. We're looking at, like 1% of all the people who struggle with being overweight or obese can really find the genetic component. It has more to do with lifestyle. Do you have a sedentary lifestyle, which refers to inactivity? Do you skip meals? People with lower education tend to struggle more with obesity, and lots of different reasons for that. If you don't know that refried okra or deep fried chicken is not as good as chicken breast, just lean chicken breast, you're going to gain weight. So lack of education on nutrition contributes to obesity. Lower education also contributes to less opportunities in the job market, less opportunities to make money, and so that tends to push people to buying cheaper, fattier foods, living off the dollar menu at McDonald's and the like. Increased wealth, it sounds strange, but as a nation, we tend to see obesity in wealthy nations because wealthy nations have fast food joints at every corner. They have a surplus of calories and sweets and things like that. So personal wealth might not be that high, but national wealth will contribute to access to poorer foods. Maternal obesity during gestation, there are links between the mother being obese and the children coming out and being very large when they come out, as well as struggling with being overweight in their early toddler and adolescent years. And again, some hormone imbalances and glandular issues, but those are relatively rare. And there's many other ones. I always ask students, well, what do you think is the biggest factor? What do you think contributes to this? And we talk about some of this in discussion boards a little bit. For everybody, it's different. I'm as guilty of this as anybody else. When I plan my meals, I eat better. If I have a bad day or I'm in a rush and the kids are in a hurry and I feel guilty, I haven't seen them all day, boy, I'll run through the McDonald's drive-thru and get them a strawberry shake, and I'm using emotion, I'm using convenience, I'm using, wanting to connect with them and spend time with them as an excuse to give them something that's not necessarily good for them. So we all struggle with stress and not getting enough exercise and skipping meals or eating meals we know we shouldn't, and all of those things help slowly but surely help contribute to obesity. And again, I'll cover a few of these because I do want you to know these for assessment. Ghrelin, it's a weird spelled word, isn't it, with an H in there, but I have it in the phonetic in parentheses there, ghrelin. Ghrelin is a hormone. A lot of people have never heard of ghrelin before. It's a hormone actually released by the stomach, and it tells the brain to feel hunger. So, when you start feeling that gurgling in your stomach, that's stomach acid dumping in there. You feel the rumbling, that's peristalsis, and you also have the sensation of hunger. That is a result of ghrelin. The stomach releasing ghrelin will tell the brain, hey, go find some food. We're hungry in here. And we've seen in some instances, people who struggle with obesity, that signal never gets turned off. They're constantly releasing ghrelin, even though they just ate 3 pizzas. And so they say they feel hungry, and doctors will be like, how can you feel hungry? You just had 3 pizzas or whatever it may be. And sure enough, they'll look at their blood levels of ghrelin and they're off the charts. So they really physically do have that trigger that tells them that they're hungry. It's just not being shut off after the stomach's been filled. Leptin has the opposite effect. Leptin is a hormone released by our fat tissue, or otherwise known as our adipose tissue, and that triggers that sensation of feeling full, or satiety. Satiety means satisfied or that kind of full sensation. So if you see the word satiety or satiation, that refers to being satisfied, being content, being full. And so leptin triggers that feeling of contentment or being full. And that's released by our adipose tissue. And same thing here. We do see in some patients that struggle with extreme obesity that fat tissue is not releasing leptin in the levels that it should to help create that sense of satisfaction so that people turn off the desire to eat. There's also evidence too that maybe leptin is still being made in high enough quantities, but the body's cellular receptors just aren't responding to it the way that they should. So kind of like the same idea with insulin. Sometimes the pancreas will make insulin, but the cell receptors become insulin resistant. So insulin doesn't have the same effect it used to. There's like a tolerance level that's been built up. So even though the body releases it, the cells that need to respond to it aren't receiving the signal. It's like a dropped cell phone call. A couple other hormones, the ones you've probably heard of before, endorphins. Endorphins are kind of associated with that, feel good that we have after exercise. And it's a very important hormone to release. It's not only does it help give us that euphoric sensation after exercising, which we all love when we're done exercising. Makes it always feel good when you're done exercising to get that little runner's high. But they can be released in response to other stimuli as well, like things like smelling an apple pie or cookies baking in the oven. And they've been shown that endorphins may enhance that drive to eat. And really, from an evolutionary standpoint, that makes sense. If you do something physically demanding, you've burned a lot of calories. And so it makes sense that the endorphin release, that feel-good endorphin release you have after exercising, that it would have the consequential effect of stimulating the desire to eat. Makes sense. You just burned a bunch of calories. The body now wants you to replace those. So we can see those connections between endorphins and the desire to eat. Serotonin is another kind of feel-good hormone, kind of another one that we see this one released more though when we consume certain types of food. When you kind of get that euphoric high after consuming certain high-fat, high-sugary foods, that's usually the result of serotonin levels. So serotonin absolutely is linked to making you feel satisfied when you have high-fat, high-sugar foods. And so, yeah, there's absolutely a kind of that, when people say, oh, it's comfort food, it physically is comfort food. You have a biochemical response in your brain that tells your body that it feels good to eat a tub of ice cream or eat that chocolatey dessert. So those are some of those hormones that really influence our habits. Again, some of them have been diagnosed or documented to be out of whack in some cases of obesity, but in general, it's relatively rare. Usually we're not heeding the signals our body is telling us, and we're using emotions or poor habits or convenience to drive things. Again, why diets don't work. Talked a little bit about this before, but I will always mention it again. Diets don't work. Students always ask me, Mary, what diets do you approve of? Would you do Atkins? Would you do Weight Watchers? What do you think of the paleo diet? What do you think of this diet? And I always tell them the same thing. If you think you can do it for the next 50 years, go ahead and do it. If it's something that you can maintain and live with and tolerate and build into your lifestyle and do it for 50 years, do it. I don't even look at how, is it balanced, is it, what are the calorie counts, what is this, do you have to pay for it? Because very quickly, people will find out that, boy, if, she says I can do it if I can do it for 50 years, but I can't afford to be on Nutri-Slim or MetaFast, or I can't afford that for 50 years, or, I'm going to be miserable if I don't eat carbohydrates, until I'm 80. Right away, students will recognize when I tell them, do that for 50 years and then it's fine. They'll recognize really quickly that, boy, these diets they're really short term. They're not a long-term change in my habits. You have to change your habits for your life to make something work. Because if you don't, as soon as you go off that diet, you are going to go back to old habits, and eventually you'll get back to that old set point, whatever that set point weight was. Your diet will fail, and you'll go back to wherever you were based on those long-term habits that you have established. And so just to kind of give you a sense of some of the things that can happen, this is typically what we see happen when someone's on a strict diet. The first thing that happens is you lose a lot of weight due to using up your glycogen stores. People will essentially starve themselves. They will not consume enough calories to support life, and they'll burn up all their glycogen stores. And sure, you'll do some fat burning, no doubt about it, but this glycogen is going to go first, because remember that glycogen breaks down into glucose, and that's the fuel of choice for the brain. So the glycogen stores are going to go, fat will go as well, but your body will recognize that, oh my gosh, they're not consuming enough calories to support life. So even though they're going to burn their glycogen and they're going to start burning some fat, your metabolism will start to crater. It'll start to slow down. The body will go into starvation mode, and it will slow down the rate at which it consumes calories. So you're really killing your metabolism when you starve your body of what it needs. The brain will start using fats for energy when it needs to, but this will lead to fatigue, headaches, weakness, increase ketone bodies in the blood and in the urine. Again, anyone who hasn't eaten for 4 to 6 hours starts to feel that sensation, hey, I got to eat. And if you don't eat, sometimes you get over that hunger sensation, but you feel tired, you feel dizzy, you don't have energy, and this is why. Lean muscle can sometimes be converted to energy as well. So if you don't have enough fat stores around, your body will start wasting away using lean muscle as well. Nobody wants to use their lean muscle as a source of energy. Again, the use of protein is going to increase the nitrogenous waste. You're going to increase the urea in your urine, and that's harder on your kidneys. It takes a lot of work for your kidneys to process all that. So you're going to atrophy and destroy your lean muscle mass. You're going to overwork your kidneys. You're going to have difficulty with body energy and fatigue and headaches because the brain's not using the sugars it wants. And again, the body thinks it's in famine, so it's going to slow down the rate at which it burns calories, hold on to foods more. So anybody who's eaten a high fiber diet, lots of salads, lots of corn, lots of nuts, every once in a while you see something slip through in your fecal matter and you go, whoa, there's a little piece of corn kernel in there, or there's a little sunflower seed in there. We've all seen it, where the body kind of gets a little lazy, and you see a seed or a little piece of fruit slip by your system. What happens is your body, as long as you feed your body every 2 to 3 hours, your body doesn't think it's in starvation mode. So it feels comfortable being a little lazy and letting some stuff slide by. But if you are in starvation mode, not only do you slow down your metabolism, your body's digestive system slows way down too. It's going to hold on to what food you do consume and squeeze every little bit of nutrition out of that food, leading to constipation, leading to all sorts of problems with irregular bowel movements. And then when you cheat, then when you finally cave in, or don't, as some people say, don't have enough willpower. Your willpower, I hate that when people refer to that. When you feel that sensation and need to cheat, it's because your body's telling you something. You go and you gorge yourself. Typically people overeat when they've been starving themselves. And so they go and maybe they, even if they don't overeat in the cheating process, maybe they just go back to their old habits. You now have this lower BMR. You now have a slowed down digestive system. So what you normally ate in the past now is causing you to gain weight. And so this is where you get that yo-yo effect diet. So this is where people will lose 10 pounds but then gain back 15. Or they'll lose 20 and gain back 25. This is a direct result of the body slowing down the system due to you starving it of something and then going back to your old habits and actually gaining all the weight back and then some. So that's why we see those yo-yo approaches. The best approach to a healthy lifestyle and even to losing weight, eat small, frequent meals. And when I say small, frequent meals, I mean like 200 to 300 calories at a time, every 2 to 3 hours. So you're really having like 6 to 8 meals a day. And that's where you're getting your 1,800 to 2,000 calories a day. So the body never goes into starvation mode. It never worries where its next meal is coming from. You're not spiking your sugars and then dropping your sugar levels way down for 4 to 6 hours. You're kind of always keeping those blood glucose levels intact. And you have a good balance between carbs, fats, and proteins. Remember, in one of my units I talked about how carbs are kind of the fuel of the flame that helps burn fats. There's metabolic pathways where fat burn will not be done as efficiently if there are no carbohydrates around. So carbs actually help you burn fats, and carbs create the blood glucose that we need for our brain. Fats help with storage, protein for muscle building, enzyme production, fats we need for hormones, fiber for the GI tract, glucose to feed the brain. Again, we know now all these functions of all these major these energy nutrients, not only how they provide us energy, but all their functions in the body. So we need a good balance between them. And then exercise. If you exercise, it's going to keep your BMI up and your heart rate down. And you'll burn calories better and keep that weight off. Some more reasons for exercise, and I discussed this a little more in another unit, but just a couple to touch on here. Exercising increases your BMR. You convert that fat to muscle, makes you leaner, and demands more calories. And then that exercise also works your heart and your circulatory system. So I mentioned before how you burn calories when you exercise, and then you also increase that BMR, so even when you're not exercising, you're burning calories. And you're keeping your heart and your circulatory system fit. When your heart pumps blood more efficiently, it pumps fewer beats per minute to achieve the body's needs. It sounds counterintuitive, but a typical average heartbeat or heart rate is probably about 70, 72 beats per minute. Would be a little bit less than 1 beat per second. So it's about 70 beats per minute. Really, really fit athletes, really extremely healthy, fit people aerobically, they will commonly have a heart rate around 50, 55. I mean, you don't want your heart rate to be to 0. You want to keep your heart beating, but it's very common for very fit people to have heart rates down below 60, down in that 50, 55 range, because what that tells you is their heart is so good at what it does, that it's so efficient at pumping blood, that it doesn't have to pump as many times per minute to do the same job as somebody else who's out of shape. Having a higher heart rate, having a heart rate in the 80s and the 90s, your heart is working extremely hard to do the same amount of work that somebody else is doing in 50 beats. And so athletes, very fit people, will actually see a low, strong heart rate that has a really strong, heavy beat that is very efficient at getting volume through. Whereas people who are not efficient at pumping, they have to work just that much harder to function. So I touched on obesity and obesity-related illnesses a little bit. Now the other end of the spectrum, the eating disorder challenges. Oops, hold on 1 second. We do see in the United States and other countries, mainly in developed nations, people that have eating disorders. And the bulk of those eating disorders you tend to see in females. About 90 to 95% of people who struggle with anorexia nervosa and binge eating disorder, where they're undernourished or underweight, they tend to be females. They tend to come from middle and upper class families. The males who suffer from these eating disorders tend to be either extreme athletes, like a lot of distant runners, cross-country runners, or dancers, modern dance, ballet dancers. They're all trying to keep their weight down for their profession. So again, not as many males suffer from it, but we do see men suffer from it, and it does tend to be more in those career paths. Most people, before they develop into a specific eating disorder, will suffer from what's called body dysmorphic disorder, which is a real warped sense of vision of the reflection in the mirror. You look in the mirror and you see something very different from what the rest of us see in the mirror. You focus on those little tiny spots and little problem spots, whereas other people look at the whole you. You see the extra fat on your chin or the extra dimple of cellulite on your thigh. And from that, they develop really extreme eating behaviors. So we typically treat this with counseling, behavior modification. Sometimes we have inpatient care. Not inpatient car. Inpatient care, not inpatient car. Sorry about that. Spell check didn't catch it. And again, the major eating disorders that kind of dovetail off of body dysmorphic disorder are anorexia nervosa, bulimia nervosa, and binge eating disorder. First, bulimia nervosa is characterized by a binge and a purge. So what people will do is they will stuff themselves with food. They'll gorge themselves with multiple food sources, drive around to many fast food places and eat a bunch of food, or eat 5 pizzas or whatever it may be, to the point of being just totally stuffed. And then they'll purge their body, typically by vomiting. Most cases of bulimia nervosa are overeating and then vomiting it out. Some cases of bulimia, you see over-exercising, laxative abuse, or insulin abuse. It's not always easily identified because somebody can, an ill person is not always super duper skinny. Some food will get through the system. Sometimes they won't have an opportunity to purge, and so they'll be stuck with the binge in their body. They'll be stuck with all that food. So you don't always see people who have bulimia nervosa really, really skinny. Problems that result from this, tooth decay, enamel erosion in their teeth, again, all those acids coming up can lead to esophageal ruptures, ulcers in the stomach, tooth rot, and even death. Some people have ruptured their esophagus and didn't get help in time to stave off the bleeding and actually died from this. Whereas anorexia nervosa is characterized more by extreme starvation. So there is never the binge with anorexia. People just tend to be extremely thin, just like bag of bones thin, real strict calorie counters. They'll eat a carrot for lunch, maybe a piece of cheese. Again, both of these are extreme examples of behavioral issues that are tied to extreme interpretations of the body image. It also can be, other things can contribute to it too. I've actually known many people who suffer from both of these in my family as well, my extended family, and in talking to them, I've learned a lot about the psychology of it. It's, well, you know, Mary, I can't control this aspect of my life, but I can control what I put in my body. So for a lot of them, it's not just about body image, it's about control, it's about feeling a sense of loss or lack of ability to dictate what happens in their life. So this is a way they can control something. And so I've seen lots of strange behavior, puking in Ziploc bags and hiding it under the bed, and weird things things that people go, what? They would hide their puke under the bed? Yeah, it was theirs. They wanted to keep it. It was a control issue. It was about, it's mine. I ate it. I'm going to puke it up, and now I'm going to save it. And so, bags and bags of vomit hidden under their bed. And so it's not just about body dysmorphic disorder. It is really control issues as well. Continue with anorexia nervosa. People, they tend to get so thin. They're very cold. They're very weak. They tend to feel very fatigued, have headaches, irregular heartbeats, and death can occur. Many people have died from anorexia nervosa because of heart failure. Some cases can require hospital treatment. Some really extreme cases, even if they don't require hospital treatment for symptoms of the disease, they will require treatment just for behavioral modification, and so they can have their diet and exercise regimen, their diet and exercise regimen really monitored. And again, the last one, binge eating disorder, it's similar to the binge of bulimia, but without the purge. And this is the cause for many cases of obesity. Contributing factors are habitus, psychological issues, experiences. Someone will have triggers that will set them off on a path of eating a lot of food. I've known a few people that I've gotten some insight from in this issue that I've talked to about, why do you struggle with, binging on all these foods? They were, brave enough to share with me some of their history, and they struggled with molestation as kids. They were maybe raped or abused in some way by a partner, and obesity was a way for them to hide. They wanted to make themselves less attractive. The sensation of gorging themselves on food kind of release those feel-good serotonin hormones that kind of help them with some emotional issues at the time. And now that some of them that I've talked to who've gone through recovery and some therapy have said they recognize their triggers now. It's, a man will hit on them, but they never dealt with an issue of rape or molestation, and they didn't want to be attractive, so they tried to eat to, cover up any beauty that somebody might see. And so lots and lots of different factors can contribute to it. Poor eating habits, psychological issues, different experiences, all those things can contribute to binge eating disorder. And they're not always clearly definable. It doesn't mean if you tend to, binge eat, it doesn't necessarily mean that you had something terrible happen to you in your childhood. It could just be the force of bad habits. It could be the force of, being around other people that binge eat. So a lot of different things can contribute to it. Again, typical to the binge of bulimia, but without that purge. Oops, let me go back. quick here. So again, the big things to focus on in this unit: know what the BMI is, know how to calculate it. So know that it's a ratio of weight versus height. Know the BMI classification. You know, a BMI of 35, is that overweight, underweight, obese? A BMI of 25, is that overweight, underweight, healthy? So know the classification system. Know that we use BMI in general when we look at populations to help us gauge risk factors for health issues. However, on an individual basis, the BMI does have its downfalls. It does have issues with not being able to determine body fat percentage, exercise levels, where the fat is stored, etc. And know some of those other ways that you can test for, more accurately test for body fat composition and overall health. Know some of the issues that we see, or the challenges with obesity and obesity-related illnesses when it comes to social costs, financial costs, and health costs. And then some of these challenges with being underweight or eating disorders where we're malnourished or have trouble keeping nutrients in. So be aware, be able to define anorexia nervosa, bulimia nervosa, binge eating disorder, body dysmorphic disorder. Know what your BMR is, your basal metabolic rate. Know what EER is, your estimated energy requirement. Know the difference between voluntary activities and involuntary activities. Your involuntary activities are the things that are included in your BMR. I can't regulate my heartbeat. I can't regulate how fast my kidneys clean my blood. I can't control peristalsis of my digestive system. Those are involuntary activities that are included in our BMR. Voluntary activities are like playing a game of volleyball, taking the stairs, those types of things, mowing the lawn, whatever it may be. So know those definitions and know how all those different things fit into calculating a healthy weight and maintaining overall good energy balance.